Good evening and welcome to this very special Building Emotional Resilience. You know me, I'm always so delighted to be here with you. And I see lots of lovely familiar names in the chat, which I always love. And please do keep the chat coming because it's really important. I have an amazing guest for you this evening. Allison Keating is a chartered psychologist, and we're really going to be digging deep, but also keeping things incredibly practical. And Alison, that's at the heart of Alison's work, is about being practical. If you follow her on Instagram, you'll be well aware that she is known as the practical psychologist. And if you don't follow her, I really strongly suggest that you do because she gives some really wonderful, grounded, practical tips. So, what I want to do is focus in particular, we're looking at how to mind yourself and also how to really cultivate harmonious and peaceful family relationships. Because essentially, really, Christmas is about family. The heart of it is about spending time with our loved ones. And the quote by Eckhart Tolle always sort of makes me laugh in a way because he once said that if you think you're enlightened, go home and spend spend a week with your family of origin, and then you'll see. So, as much as we can laugh about it, there is a lot of triggers within our family unit, and it's in particular our family that we of origin of where we come from. And also, this week in particular, it's Monday. There's that sort of, I don't know if you're picking up on it yourself, but that collective energy of people starting to get really busy, but also really tired. And those two together are never a great combination because when you're, extra demands upon you, social occasions, getting everything ready, and then that sense of being really tired as well, because, it's been a long year for many people, and there's that sense of just wanting to really rest and relax. So it's almost like that last bit of the race. That's the feeling that I'm definitely picking up on. So, as you know, as part of my community, what I love to do is to really get get quiet, to pause before we begin, to get some sense of connection to ourselves, to slow everything down. And then what we have is the very thing that we need, which is that lovely energy to really benefit. What I want for you more than anything is that you truly benefit from this evening session, and that you bring this wisdom that we're all going to be so enlightened our family won't recognize us. They'll say, who are you? So without further ado, let's do a little mindfulness meditation to center ourselves and bring everyone together. So if you are happy to do so, just take a full and very deep breath. So breathe in as full as you can, hold the breath, and then just gently close down the eyes, exhaling fully. We're going to keep this very simple. So when you're ready, I want you to breathe in again. And this time I want you to breathe in a sense of calmness. So breathing in calmness and then exhaling any sense of chaos, exhaling fully. We're going to do this 2 more times. And each time we do it, just see if you can notice your whole system starting to slow down. So when you're ready, breathing in calmness and then exhaling any sense of chaos. Slowing everything down. Breathing in calmness and exhaling any sense of chaos. Letting that go. So just rolling the shoulders back and down. And I want you to notice, I want you to imagine that you're somewhere. Maybe it was earlier today, maybe it's tomorrow, but that inevitable question that can be asked of all of us. Are you all set for Christmas? I want you to just hear those words and I want you to just notice what happens. I can actually feel it myself. I want you to notice if there's any sense of pressure, tension within the body. Just pay attention to what's going on physically when you're asked that question. Does the heart beat a little faster? Does the breath become a little more shallow? And what does it even mean if you pause and you stop and you ask yourself, all set? And is it possible for any of us to ever be all set? So, what I would love for you in these days coming up to Christmas is to take a really huge step back from that feeling that can arise in all of us and to really shift your perspective and allow yourself to take away the pressure of anything being perfect and to replace it with a sense of presence, of calmness, of stillness, and perspective of what Christmas truly means to you. So we'll take a final deep breath, hold it at the top, open up the eyes, and then a nice long exhale. So there we are. Please do keep the polls. The polls are there ready for you to answer. And your answers are really important because they really help myself and Alison here today to kind of gear the whole conversation towards what is particularly pertinent and helpful to you. So, as you know, these webinars are offered freely to the public, and we're really happy to do that and reach as many people as we can. So please be sure to let everybody know about the series, and also just to want to thank you so much for being here. This is the 8th one that we've done, myself and Kieran together with our amazing guests, and just how important it is to have this community for us. And we're so grateful to you for being here. So, Allison Keating is a lovely, lovely lady who is, as I said, incredibly practical and grounded. And she is somebody who appears very frequently in the media. She has an amazing column out every Monday in The Independent where there's a reader asks a particular question. I'm sure maybe some of you have read her expertise, but she always offers really, really solid advice. And one of the things that I read recently, Alison, you're probably going to go, "Hey, where did you get this from?" But I thought it was something really very insightful as well for Christmas in general and relationships in general. So Alison said, and it was on a web page I found. So forgive me, Alison, if you're like, "Where did you?" I'm like a journalist here, but it's a lovely quote. And Alison said, "As a true Gemini, I love mental space and air. I need space in my head and heart to just be who I am, not who I think I should be. Allowing others the same space to make up their own mind is vital for all of our collective growth." And I think that's a lovely insight into how we can bring that idea of letting people be, if you like, in terms of our family relationships this Christmas. So, Alison, please do, Kieran, if you want to bring Alison onto the stage and I can welcome her properly. There she is.
Hi.
Hello, lovely. Thank you so much for being here. It's really, really lovely, and again, very, very grateful to you for your time, especially in this week, as so many of us are feeling that, busyness and that overwhelm that can rise up. So, Alison, I suppose if you wouldn't mind just telling people, I've given a little bit of insight into your work, but perhaps you could tell the people here this evening a little bit more about your background and your work.
So I'm a psychologist, and if you ask my 7-year-old what that means, it's that you listen to people when they're hurting, and you try and give them things and like a she didn't say psychological toolbox, but she called it a toolbox to help them, you know, figure things out themselves. So it's kind of providing this sense of support that's completely non-judgmental. It is that space, and we often hear people talking about holding space. It's holding space for people when they're in deep pain. And the work I do is mostly one-to-one with people, and in terms of anxiety or panic attacks, a lot of relationship issues, like you mentioned, and then into organizations as well. And I think it's just so important. So how we met really was when our books came out. So in terms of my book, it was The Secret Lives of Adults. And literally when I was, sitting there, if you think about what I do in my work, I would, when a client is sitting in front of me, They're telling me what's happened and what has happened to them. And as they do, I imagine all these different people in front of me, and I see them as, so say it's a woman, just as an example, and they're telling me that they're feeling overwhelmed or they're feeling stressed. But on the outside, it looks like they're doing really well. So a lot of times I would see people kind of with high functioning anxiety, and in their workspace, it looks like they're killing it. They're flying it. They're doing so well. They seem so confident and calm and like, oh yeah, no, you're the one to ask. You're the one who does everything. But in that private space in therapy, there was that sense of that gap getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And you know, when you're like, your legs are straddled in between, it's like, oh, I'm going to fall and everyone's going to see. So my work kind of is about providing a really gentle but practical space for people to honestly show up as they are, and to acknowledge that horrible gap. Like I often say to clients, like I imagine it like a tsunami. And when we think of Christmas in a way, like if I think about anxiety, but Christmas, and you say this week, it can feel like it's just, whoa, and you're looking back and you can see the wave coming and you're like, coming, you know. And as you said, I thought it was such a good point, Fiona. People are already exhausted, not just from the year that we've had, but there has been no time, I don't think, for people where they kind of got their head, their emotions, and their body in check after COVID. It was just kind of like, woohoo, it's finished. You know, I know lots of people are still not well, and still having so many sicknesses. And anyone with kids at the moment, I feel like my kids have been sick since September. You know what I mean? I'm like, can one person just not be sick? Like I was at the doctor's again today with one kid, you know. And it's like, it's the ongoing kind of relentlessness of it. And I think people are excited about Christmas, but also feeling that pressure back on, as you said, that pressure to go out. It can be quite performative, I think, at Christmas time. Do you know what I mean?
Absolutely, yeah.
And like, especially, I thought what was interesting from my perspective, I'm sure you saw it as well, like kind of like on the couch. Some people took a breath and was like, okay, this is what we're doing. We're keeping it small this year and we're allowed to do it during kind of lockdowns and everything. And it was like nearly acceptable. Whereas I think social pressure has ramped up, like there's no excuse to say let's go. Do you know? So I think people have found they're saying yes to a lot of stuff. This time of year is the tsunami kind of where there's a lot of financial pressure. There's a lot of pressure from, you know, your own lists, from other people's lists, from work. And when I'm talking about, like, when I imagined like my clients in front of me and that the book I wrote, it's about that Russian doll and all the different roles that you live every single day. You're the mother, you're the father, you're the parent, you're the daughter, you're the employee. And then supposedly we're supposed to have all this space to do our self-care, and it can feel like another job. Sometimes it's at the bottom. So I think it was so lovely to start with the meditation, Fiona, because that's really the crux of it. It's just about pausing and taking a breath and kind of going, okay, can we shift our perspective here a little bit? Can we be honest and say, actually, I'm really, really exhausted and I'm going to give that event a miss tonight, or I'm going to go for an hour. Then when you're there, you might decide to stay longer. But I think it's kind of nice to give yourself that permission.
Yes. Yeah.
Like you're a little unsure. It's like everyone's a little unsure, and they're like, do we go 100% or, you know, and even social. I love your polls on here tonight because I do little polls on my Instagram account. And they're really interesting. And I ask people, you know, how are you feeling about going back out again and socializing? And 70% of people said, I'm quite happy sitting at home. Social animals, and I know you're very good at this, Fiona. It's kind of that, you know, it is important that we connect back with others, but I think we're struggling. I don't think there's a balance, but finding any balance, you know.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I think you're right. It's that sort of contrast. I think it's such an extreme, if you like, over the last few years, where it was like, you know, we were all sort of almost hermits in our own little
Yeah.
bubble. And then now that extreme, any extreme is going to create some form of anxiety. But
Mm.
I wanted to say to you, Alison, I always loved the title of your book. I think it's the most clever title ever. Like, The Secret Lives of Adults. It's just so enticing. Like, it sounds like a movie. You're like, I want to know more about that.
Yes, Fiona, when I Googled it, it actually came up with some very different responses, and it was actually an adult movie. I was like, whoa, that was
Maybe that's what I yeah.
that was purely innocent at the beginning. But to me, it was like, I wish
Yeah.
people knew what I actually hear from people on the couch,
Yes.
because no
Yeah.
one would ever judge anyone ever again. People would actually be compassionate. And
I
a
couldn't agree
reason
more.
I kind of thought of it as the secret lives is because it's often even a secret to yourself. And that's what I love
Absolutely.
about therapy. That's kind of the magic of it. Because like you're sitting there and you're kind of like, okay, so this is triggering you now with your partner,
Yes.
or your children are triggering this with you, but perhaps this is an older wound, like that kind of psychological wound. So when we look at Christmas,
Mm.
it's just like we light a big old match, and so many of the triggers that we have, sure, they're being lit up right now by the partner not helping, or work being too pressurized, or feeling not good enough, or feeling like, God, why can't I relax? Why can't I do the self-care well? And so just feeling like you're kind of failing no matter how hard you're actually trying. And that's what I'm hearing a lot from people. But actually understanding the psychodynamics of where these belief systems that you hold about yourself or others, where the expectations that you hold about Christmas, about how you think it actually should be. And it's interesting sometimes when their couple are together, like the two Christmas norms could be completely different.
Mm. Yes.
And
Yeah.
that can even spark issues. So it's just about kind of connecting back in, and like you did at the beginning there, just, I think our families know where all our buttons are, right? And they just go, that one, and then I press that one, ding, 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 ding. And I think if we just know that and go, fine,
Mm-hmm.
they're the longest relationships I've ever had. The relationship you have with your siblings, longest relationship you'll have in your entire life. And
Mm.
thank God do they know how to press your buttons.
Mm.
And like most people kind of, people leave their homes and they leave as adults and they're, doing very well. And then
Mm.
they walk through the front door of home.
Mm.
They kind of revert back, Kevin and Perry
Totally.
style, to like 13 or 14 or
Mm.
15, pick your age. And you're
It's
kind
going to
of
be a vulnerable age, isn't it? It's like that. Yeah. Yeah.
even with yourself.
Not your best self.
Why am I reacting like this? But it's like they're just, pushing the buttons. So if someone's going to push those buttons, and I suppose what I say about kind of, conflict in family relationships is that sometimes it's useful when it actually is consistent. You actually know how it's going to happen.
Mm-hmm.
So you can kind of step back and go, okay, I kind of know how this will play out. So I have to take responsibility for my reaction. And if that just means taking a pause or saying, oh, listen, I just have to catch something in the car, where you just have a little break for a second, but it's not a big dramatic
Mm-hmm.
exit, I'm leaving.
Yeah.
And I think it's just recognizing when you're kind of physiologically in a heightened state, like you said, my heart's beating a bit faster. I'm not thinking very clearly. I want to say this, but that's not coming out.
Yeah.
And just to kind of create space and recognize something happens, you have space to think, and that's when you take your pause. I think of it like a remote control. And again, this is my 7-year-old who gave me this idea. It wasn't actually me. And she went around the house when she was really small with a remote control, and she was doing this. And I said, "What are you doing?" And she goes, "I'm pausing life." And
Wow.
I was like, that's deadly. I'm totally robbing that. And I thought to myself, if we all thought about just having the pause button,
Mm-hmm.
but actually just press pause for a second. And that is when you walk away and you take a few breaths. And if it's to go into the toilet and do it, fine. And to me, the one of the most effective breaths I find is just go in. If you're in the bathroom, hand in your heart, breathe in. I am safe. Breathe out. I am calm. Do that 3 times. And you're moving from one nervous system to the other. You know all this. But that seems so simple, but it is so effective. And you're literally switching off that fight or flight response. So, like, when they
Yes.
trigger you, just know that you have that one in the bag.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's so, so integral. Would you say though, like, you're like when you say that siblings, let's say siblings, for example, they know which buttons to press, right? Do you think that it is an intentional thing that is going on, or do you think it's a bit of both? Do you think there's that subconscious sense of people? Yeah,
Like we're talking major kind of family systems here,
yeah,
massive dynamics that people, I'm not saying they're not aware of what they're doing, but like sometimes it's an unmet need in your sibling that they think perhaps there's
mm,
favoritism.
mm-hmm,
When you have sibling rivalry, it normally just goes back down to a feeling of, real or perceived of parental favoritism.
mm-hmm,
And that's an old wound. Like what I find most interesting about kind of, the concept of adult psychology is that we talk a lot, and it is so important about child development, and mental health in adolescence. But in ways, I think we kind of leave adults sometimes a little bit to their own devices, and they're often the ones, if we think of the Russian doll,
mm-hmm,
juggling so many different things. It's such a challenging, great in lots of ways, but it's
mm,
still very, very challenging, energy wise, kind of, and I think just the taxing nature of modern life. And if we take Christmas into that, if you've already been this kind of, say at that say this is full capacity, if
mm-hmm,
you've already been there, and then we throw Christmas into the mix,
mm.
just can overflow. So I like to think of it like, I'm sure you've seen, it was a great experiment that Dr. Julie did,
Oh
where she
yes,
has like a big vat. I would love
yeah,
that. I would love to that in my house. I think that's
yeah,
it's a big huge vat, and she gets a little drill. So she's showing, like, say she has a hose pipe in it, and that's the stresses and strains of life, and they keep coming in. And that's how
yes,
clients, I'm like, the anxiety won't go,
mm-hmm,
or you're not going to never be worried again, or you're not ever going to not be sad again. This
mm.
stuff is, life will present so many
And
options.
sometimes it comes in bucket loads, it can come
Absolutely.
like, yeah,
Illness and grief and separation and you name
yeah,
it. So many
yeah,
different things that are going to come your way. But she gets this great drill, and she
mm-hmm.
drills in the side, and that's your exercise. She drills in the other side. That's kind of
Your
you
meditation or
writing out, meditating,
yeah,
active care. And it's always the kind of the basic psychoeducational stuff. It's your sleep.
mm-hmm,
Plain and simple. Like, my stuff's never sexy. It's pretty boring. But the truth is, if your sleep is off, if you're not doing any kind of body movement, if you're not actually eating, what I mean eating well, I mean nourishing yourself, kind of
mm,
enjoying your food, sitting down,
mm.
it kind of being a lovely time to connect to people, um, all those basics, then you
Which
still
can get messed up as well at this time of year, because if you're
have
having late nights or you're overindulging, or you're not going to the gym, or you're not
yeah,
doing those things. So what would you say there, like in terms of, do you think it's good to be very practical and like say for people here this evening, say, look, this is the week coming ahead, will I schedule in those times, like actually, like I've booked my yoga for the week because that's just has to happen. Like
yes.
there's no, that's that's a non-negotiable, because
But
I
you
know
see,
myself.
you know that, and you
Yeah,
know that you need that
yeah,
to help you sustain what you actually want to do, how you want to be, how you want to show up for your relationship. So you know you have to fill that back up. That's
yeah,
exactly it. And I would be all about the calendar and kind of make it a family calendar. Again, I'm being specific, but say it's a family. We often will have all the kids' activities down there, parties there, this.
yes,
And yet
exactly.
for the kind of, say that the parents, I just say to people, you need to actually schedule in your exercise time, and to see that as kind of air.
Yeah,
And that could
absolutely.
just be a walk around the block. It doesn't really matter what it is. Just everyone knows what helps them kind of de-stress.
Yeah,
You know?
exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that is so, and it's to be accountable to yourself,
Yeah.
and in a sense that, it's almost like not to be the martyr as well. So, well, I don't have time. It's like you have to take the time, because no one will give it to you, and I think it's so essential, and it is a gift for everyone else, because you come back in a better frame of mind, and that is the best gift for the people that you love.
Yeah.
Because I think like when we dig that little bit deeper again, it's like, let's say, for example, maybe somebody here watching this evening or on the playback had childhood traumas, for example, or difficulties in their childhood. And Christmas just isn't. Like if we look at the polls here, let's
Mm.
see what we've got. So 24% of people here are saying they love Christmas,
Right.
54% are saying they like it, and 21%, which is okay, so it's kind of mixed.
Mm.
Um, and that medium place being the most but sort of popular. So there's 21% here saying they dread it, right? And there's a reason that that's
Mhm.
happening, okay? Now, not everyone has to be the mad Christmas. Like I do love Christmas, but there isn't any kind of pressure that you have to. But if you don't, there is usually, like in most things, there's something behind that, and maybe it is unhappy memories. Maybe it's a childhood Christmases that weren't so harmonious. Maybe there was tension, dramas, financial concerns, etc. Do you think it's like possible to actually start to reframe that in some way so that you can become a person who maybe you don't love it, but maybe you can start to warm to it more, start to, become more, dare I say it, positive about it?
I don't know. Okay. I like the concept of not even warming to it, but figuring out what warms you.
Hmm.
And I think it's just really important to figure out what would make it special for you. Like I often say to people, like I think it's a lovely thing to ask before Christmas, what makes Christmas special for you? And I just think it can actually be quite a personal thing. And like your social preferences, for one person, it is like having everybody there and it kind of being chaos. And that's their idea of absolute joy. Somebody else is like, oh my God, this is
Mm.
this is actually
Overwhelm.
really intense.
Mm.
But if there's trauma there, I suppose what I find difficult for people at Christmas time is that there is societal pressure because in as much as everyone asks, are you all set for the Christmas? The first question people ask is, how are you spending Christmas or where are you going? And that, even I'm sure the person doesn't mean it in a bad way at all, but it makes people feel less than if they're not saying they're going back home. And many people are estranged from family, or actually they have actually kind of psychologically divorced from their family because it actually wasn't healthy. And I think that pressure of this
Mm.
kind of idea that we have this perfect Christmas. I mean, honestly, like when I listen to the ads on the radio, I do kind of laugh, and I am like, perfect, perfect, perfect. It's a perfect
Yeah.
turkey, it's a perfect present, it's the perfect pair of socks, it's the perfect everything. Do you know what I mean? And
Mm.
no matter how much you kind of smile and go, oh, for God's sake, still gets in there. Because if
Hmm.
your family dynamic is not perfect, if you've experienced long-term mental issues, and not just kind of like psychological, psychiatric, if there's been addiction issues in your family, if there's any type of trauma from kind of all the types. And then sometimes I find, Fiona, people aren't even giving themselves space to recognize the smaller traumas, the wounds that actually happen in terms of feeling like whether you belong in a family or whether you're liked or loved. And yet sometimes people are like, well, nothing really bad happened to me. And yet there's a deep ache. So I think it's just about meeting yourself and finding out what would make you feel good about, Christmas. What would be a nice Christmas to you? And I suppose specifically I'm thinking with people who are experiencing grief, that really you don't have to have any type of Christmas except the one that actually feels right for you.
Yeah. Whatever that looks like. Yeah.
Whatever
Yeah.
it's like, again, that's tricky because normally it's not just you having it. So you mightn't be able to put up the Christmas tree, but then you know that it actually is important for everybody else. So I think like that's the difficulty with Christmas. It's not just a case of meeting your own needs. It's trying to figure out how it works within kind of the whole family system. But
Mm.
I think we just can do things differently each year depending on the circumstances. I
Mhm.
like traditions, but I actually like the concept of being kind of flexible with it as well.
Yeah, I think that's a really, there's a lot in there, Alison. Like the first thing you said, I think is really important to highlight, and that's that kind of that deeper wound that you're not
Mm,
quite sure why,
yeah,
because when we say the word trauma, it can just immediately sort of go to this place of, extreme again, of something awful happening. And it doesn't necessarily mean that at all. Trauma is, as you will know, and I'm sure maybe people here listening have heard that before, that it is in fact a response rather than an experience. And the work of Gabor Mate is really particularly good around this whole area. So when we look at that, and really stay with it, I think that is the deeper work that will actually benefit
yeah,
you as an individual, but then also extend out towards the family, and that you start to reclaim that sense of feeling safe and secure within yourself. Because otherwise, like you said earlier, what can happen is that, you walk in an adult, you
mm,
feel strong, you feel confident, you feel like you've got a handle on life. And then within 10 minutes, that vulnerability can start to open up, and people can feel very, very exposed
yeah,
and not quite understanding why. What's wrong with me? Why am I
exactly.
so anxious?
Yeah. Why am I so anxious? Why am I so frustrated? Why am I being cross with them? And I really don't want to be.
Yeah.
And I think it's that misplaced grief. And sometimes grief comes in different guises. It's for not having the family that you actually wanted to have, or not having the relationships in the family that you would have liked to have had, comparing yourself to other people and going, why is our family not like their family? So I think, there are so many elements that Christmas brings to the fore
Yes,
for people.
totally.
And it's very public, isn't it?
Yes, yes, it is. Yeah, yeah,
You know?
absolutely. And
So
that's
it's
why I
everyone
think,
looking in. How are you
yeah.
doing? How are you spending yours? What are you doing? And it's impossible not to compare and go, ooh, well, actually, I don't get on with this person and we don't talk anymore, you know?
Yeah, well, the poll here, oh my goodness, it's 96.7% are saying that they have family and relationships that they find challenging at Christmas.
Yeah.
So that's a huge, like that's very, very high. So with that in mind, like if we go back to the practical, because like I think we're
Mm.
similar like that, Alison. I think we both love the practical and always try to work at that level. But then also like that deeper dive, I think, is really important because it
Yeah.
helps us be practical. So, on a practical level, with family relationships that are challenging, like what if you know that, right? So what I'd say here, first of all, is for those 96% of people, that's brilliant that you know that, right? Again, it's awareness, which is so important. But on a practical level, what can they do now this week to prepare for what they know that they're going into a challenging situation? What would
Okay.
you say?
So I think it's about working with acceptance.
Mhm.
So accepting, and this is psychological acceptance. It's not just like accepting bad behavior or accepting things that are abusive, but it is an acceptance of the people as they are. And most times, I think the frustration and the pain that we feel is that things aren't the way that we would hope them to be. And it's such a natural, normal desire.
Mhm.
You're like, God, I wish I got on with, or when you see that it's actually very frustrating, you're like, I don't know why we don't actually get on. That's actually really hurtful. They don't actually like me. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
It's hard not to take it personally.
Mhm.
Or when it's really outright, and
Mhm.
when it's that kind of very verbally like abusive and kind of, people shouting at each other, and things kicking off. I just think, one, if you're going somewhere and you know that it's going to get like that, I'd say
Mhm.
drive.
Yeah.
No, I'm not joking. So don't drive,
Yeah.
you know,
Mhm.
be able to leave. I think it's about accepting people as they actually are, but going in kind of mindful of that you're not, nothing's going to actually change, and probably it will be the same. So I think alcohol is such a huge one in families. They
Mhm.
might be going along okay, and then it just gets to a certain point and then it all kicks off. Um,
Mhm.
so you could drive. Will you get given extra for that? Absolutely.
Mm.
Sometimes I think the person, like, it's really interesting when you said for people who are aware, awareness normally comes, that awareness is painful. Do you know what I mean? Whereas you might have family members who actually aren't aware
Mhm.
of the pain that they're actually causing, or they haven't gone to that place where they actually, it's not that they're not aware of what they're doing, but they're really not seeing the impact it's actually having upon you. So you have to kind of say, okay, I'm going to be mindful and create really healthy boundaries here, which again, you will get given out to for.
Mhm. People
So
don't like it.
no, well, they don't, because they'll be like, oh my God, you're ruining Christmas. You're only spending this amount of time. But if it's quite dysfunctional, I would be mindful of the time and set your expectations beforehand. Or if you are staying over, just give yourself permission that when necessary, you kind of remove yourself from the situation.
Mm.
Something people could do this week, but depends how, serious the issues have been, is to actually write out the hurts
Mhm.
that really have come up for you before.
Mm.
See if there's a theme. And
Mhm.
then when you can kind of name your button,
Mhm.
when people try and put you into, oh, once you're this, you're that, and you actually may have done so much work on yourself, and yet
Mm.
others aren't actually seeing that frustration, and you may be going along fine, and then one little thing happens and it's just too much. It could be the heat of the kitchen. Do you know what I mean?
Mm.
And then you snap.
Yeah. Yeah, it always seems to be that the over nothing, but it's
But
not,
yeah,
it's never what it's actually about. It's never, as you
exactly.
say, the spilt turkey or
Yeah,
gravy or
yeah.
whatever it is. Yeah. There's a
Maybe
question here.
notice. Maybe, sorry, Fiona, maybe
Yeah.
notice when that feeling is
Yes.
coming. So tune in and be like, ooh, my tolerance is getting lower.
Yeah.
I am kind of biting my tongue here, and which is okay, but maybe that's the time where you take a cue and you're like, you go out and you play with the nephews and nieces or something, or you go into the kitchen, you do the washing up, but you distance yourself. I think you just kind of create a bit of a space where you can just kind of intentionally soothe your nervous system just by breathing. And it could just be washing the dishes,
Mm-hmm.
feel the
Yeah.
soapy water here in my hands. Okay, I'm just going to be present here in the moment, or even just go into the bathroom and just put your wrists under the cold water.
Mm.
Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
Just pull up
Yeah.
your sleeves and just cool everything down, because sometimes it's just that heat,
Yes.
that you're feeling upset or anxious or angry or really frustrated. And it's just like, okay, I feel like I need to kind of regulate my nervous system now. And I'm just going to tune back in. And that's where the bathroom one comes in. You just come in, close your eyes just for a second, breathe in. I am safe, breathe out. I am calm. And I liked the way you were saying you breathe in the calm and you breathe out the chaos. The
Mm.
chaos can be all around, but you can still breathe in that calm.
Mm.
It's a nice idea to breathe the chaos out.
It is, it is. And that, yeah, absolutely. And do you think if someone's like, that feeling where like what you're describing there is that you just have to get away because the intensity of the emotion is so high, and you know that if you don't, it could, you could be reactive as opposed to responsive. Do you think, like, let's say if you're in that state and the tears are starting to come,
Oh
because I
yeah.
mean, I know that feeling myself where the tears are starting to well. Do you think it's good to just go into the bathroom, close the door, and have that cry and release it? Because the tears to me are always a sign of strength and a very therapeutic way of releasing emotion. And you always feel better after. There's just, it doesn't feel necessarily good at the time, but as you're letting it go, it can feel very afterwards. You can feel a lot more
I know.
grounded.
Hugely cathartic. I mean, like
Yeah.
they're literally that your emotions chemically come out of your tears. Do you know what I
Yes.
mean? And
Yeah.
even how tears are made up, they are actually heavier. That's why they fall down your cheek. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I always
Yeah.
think it's really interesting, like depending on what's going on for someone, is like the intensity of the tears. If it's a really deep, painful, it nearly just falls out of
Yes.
your eyes. Whereas someone's sobbing, it's different. Or you know what I mean? Like the
Yeah. Yeah.
type of tears they are indicative of what is actually bringing up for you. Because sometimes they can just be so old, such an
Yes.
old pain. And what I suggest is that then when you're out of that situation,
Mm.
really amazing meditation to do is called Soften, Soothe, Allow.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm,
so if you, the link is, I'll put the link up on the Instagram page tonight, but
yeah.
it's basically, it's selfcompassion.org. And if you go into the practices,
Mm-hmm.
practices, this is a painful, it's for dealing with difficult or painful emotions. So
Mm-hmm.
what I think with like tears, like they're surface emotion, and when they keep they're stuck in your throat, you're like, uh-oh, it's coming, you know. It's great if you can get it out there, but you could also do it afterwards, where you just lie down afterwards and you allow yourself to process the emotion, where you acknowledge and validate, because you mightn't get that from the other person.
Yeah, absolutely. And you can't depend on that, and really you want to be
No,
able to give it to yourself. I think that's brilliant, Alison. There's a lot of really good practical things there as well, as we're bouncing between the two, aren't we? We're like practical, deep, practical, deep. But I love that, those tips about, like, don't get involved with the alcohol, drive. That's a huge one.
yeah,
Don't spend too long, don't be, there's no need to over extend, and to not be afraid to say, that's what I'm doing. That's your boundaries. Like, I'm
yes,
actually going to leave then, and to, say that with your head up high, and not to feel pressure. I think it's like, almost like, you talk about peer pressure. There's
yeah,
kind of family pressure there. And then the third one as well is to, again, just to go into the mindfulness state, to remove yourself, the water on the wrists.
mm,
All of these things are things that we can do, and that's what I love about our work, is that there's so much practical components that we can do to help ourselves. It's just about implementing them and remembering them. And I think what's also very useful is, when you use it once, is to actually let that soak in, to remember, my goodness, I remember, like, last Christmas I was starting to get really heated, but I actually took myself away. I went into the bathroom, I had a cry, whatever I did, and I'm so proud of myself for navigating that. And I think that's always a good way to reinforce it, that so that you'll do it again. I just want to read this out, because it's a particular query that's come in from Deirdre. Welcome, Deirdre. It's lovely to have you, as always. So Deirdre says that she was more or less estranged from her older sister for over 15 years. She was very difficult and judgmental. She was married to an alcoholic, and he died in October after falling down the stairs in a drunken state. She now wants a relationship with me, and I have invited her for Christmas because she would be alone otherwise. That's really nice, Deirdre. That's absolutely lovely. But, and understandably, I am getting very uneasy as the day approaches. How can I navigate this? I want to set boundaries with her, but I don't know how to broach it, given what she has been through. That's Thank you so much for that, Deirdre, because there's a lot in that, isn't there? There's a lot of, like, context, which really helps us. So what would you say, Alison, to that?
there's so much in it, isn't there? I think, I think, you know, giving that space and giving people a chance, because people can, change. And then I suppose, say it doesn't go well, that you then say to yourself, okay, I'm going to have to reestablish another boundary here. Or actually, we healed, worked through a lot. I now understand now what was going on for her as well. She was in a very difficult position. Like, there's such potential
Hmm.
for growth there.
Yes, that's what I see. And I think it's lovely that she's extending that
Yeah.
offer to her, that she doesn't want her to be on her own. So you sound like a really lovely, kind, caring person. And I would say that that's the most important thing, is to focus on, and, your own compassion for yourself, that you find it difficult. I mean, I can totally relate and see why you would. And then maybe, like what you were saying earlier as well, Alison, like, just, to kind of, because it's such a long period of time has passed, that you want to, like any relationship, it has to build trust again, maybe more kind of incrementally,
Yeah,
so that you don't overextend. Just, it's more important to have quality time, I would say, than quantity for something
totally.
like that.
And you know what else, Fiona? I would say
Yeah.
it's totally okay to name what's in the room. So say she comes in and both you're a bit nervous. Just say, gosh, this is a big deal, isn't it? I'm feeling a little nervous too. Like, you're not kind of like, I'm feeling, but if it feels natural
Yes.
to name what's actually there,
Yeah.
can be very connecting, said with a soft kind of intent. You know what I mean?
Yes, yeah, yeah. Absolutely. And I wonder as well, what do you think, Alison? Like, would be nice to maybe remember some times from before, when they were way before she was ever married and
Yeah,
before, back and sort of like reconnect on that level. Do you remember you
that would
were
be
at my
nice.
Wendy house or
Yeah.
something like that? What were those dolls we had? Oh my Cabbage Patch or
Oh
they
yeah,
used
yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah, like depending on what generation you are, Deirdre, but like, there's things that you could find that kind of reconnect and humor and love, to bring
yeah,
it to, because I think that's what we want to really as well to bring it all back to what it is about is that loving time, and that we want to create really lovely memories, because life I always say is precious. Um we never know what's around the corner, and to really just take every opportunity we can to show the people that we love, that we do love them, even with all of those nuances of challenges and difficulties that go with that. And I mean that not necessarily for very, toxic or dysfunctional relationships, but in any relationship, there's going to be, there is no such thing as perfection. And, really to look for the good in the people we love. And to let go, I think, as well as adults, it's so important that we start to let go of expectations of our parents. I did a live there with Jerry Hussey, who I know you've worked with as well, Alison, and he's really good at just sort of, I think I love the way he just gets to the point,
yeah,
and he's no fear about it. And he said, that he basically retired his parents from the role of being his parents. And that may sound a bit negative, but it
oh, I
isn't.
understand. Yeah.
Yeah, I understand as well, but I think a lot of people might think, my goodness, that sounds
Mm,
dramatic. But it isn't. What he's saying is that he's able to see them as people, rather than these sort of pedestals of what they should be, and how whatever disappointments or concerns that have been there over the years, that they need to be, it's our job as adults to let them go, and to have a sort of a fresh,
yeah.
new, healthy relationship. But that works both ways, in terms of parents also doing that with children. I think that's what we want, is that it's coming from both. But even if it's coming from one, that's enough to cause, a sort of a shift in dynamic. And I
Yeah.
think that's what, we really want, is to change dynamics. Um, so in terms of, like, I mentioned the word compassion there. What would you say, Alison, just because we'll finish up soon, but why do you think self-compassion is so important within our family relationships? Like, what would you say is the connection there?
Because I suppose the way I look at it sometimes is, if you had a difficult childhood or you had lots of challenges and you never received that compassion, it can be exceptionally difficult to even know how to do it yourself. And I think as Irish people, we're quite reticent to kind of like, oh, we're all being a bit cringy here. But the practice of self-compassion is one of the most fundamental things you can do, not just for yourself, but for everybody in your life. And when you're talking at the beginning there about, kind of moving away from the I'll do everything, and then on Christmas Day you'll be annoyed and you'll be
Mm-hmm.
resentful. And something small will set you off, and you've gone to all this trouble for like a month and a half. They've been at it since the day after feckin' Halloween. Do you know what I mean? It's Christmas. I'm like, not yet. To actually cultivate compassion is a practice that I do think it's as important as breathing. I think it's one that's much harder
Wow.
than we imagine to be, because often you mightn't have actually ever seen what it actually was like. So to start that practice, it's
Mm-hmm.
just radical. It really is. And it's as simple as just kind of connecting in and being
Mm-hmm.
like, this is hard. I'm really sad that happened. And
Mm-hmm.
to process that feeling with the intent, as you process, that it does actually not go, but it's processed. There's a place for it. And
Mm-hmm.
then you're intentional about, well, what do I actually want more of? Do you know what? I'd like more moments of peace.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like more moments of calm. I'd like to actually teach my children that I actually allow myself to rest, so that they don't then follow the same pattern that I've seen. That's what I mean about the secret lives of adults. It's what you've seen, what you've learned, and kind of stopping that intergenerational continuation of kind of martyrdom or I'll do it all. And it's
Mm.
not good for any relationship. It's not good for your kids. I'm being specific to families. I know I am, but it's not good to your relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Just have frustration. And like at the end of the day, presents will happen. But what people will remember is the feeling in the room. And it
Mm.
doesn't have to be perfect.
Mm.
And for people, one last thing I'd like to say is that if you do have a fight,
Mm.
so right, not joking, just say, okay, ooh, okay, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Shouldn't have said that.
Mm-hmm.
A genuine apology. Say, look, I've been under a lot of pressure. I shouldn't have said that. It was really wrong. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to say sorry. Say sorry to your kids. Say sorry to your parents. Say sorry to yourself.
Yeah.
We make mistakes. We're messy human beings. And Christmas is not going to make everything magical. We might have a white Christmas this year. However, you don't have to have a perfect Christmas and you don't have to be perfect either. So just give yourself a bit of room. And if you make a mistake, so what? You have a fight. Like I actually let's press the reset button. Like I'll say to my kids, do you want to walk back out the door there? I'm going to press reset. And then, I said, do you want to press reset? Pressing reset. And
Yeah.
I get them to walk out of the room
Mm.
and then walk back in and they're like, okay.
That's really good because it's like you're clearing whatever that energy was by actually leaving the room and coming back into it. That's yeah.
But I use the naughty step. That's my connection step. Now you can't do that with your adults. You can't have them sit in your knee.
Are you sure? I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, there you go. You could have a great Christmas. You could have a super Christmas, Fiona.
Yeah.
You need to have a connection, you know?
I know. No, I think that's people need to hear this, Alison, and especially from a professional. Like, I think it's really important to actually know that, it is okay, no matter how mindful and woke we want to
And
be.
you're not going to ruin the whole day. You had a
Yes,
bad moment, you
exactly.
said the wrong thing, you
Yeah.
overreacted. Fine. I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's that awareness though, isn't it, Alison? It's like that's the key thing. And the quicker that you're aware of it, the sooner you are able to step in and the less then it, as you say, ruins the whole day. It might just be 10 minutes of tension that can be dissolved. And I always find humor. My family are great with humor. I mean, my parents are just hilarious,
Yeah.
and so is my sister. We're all, I find that it really like it
It
just cuts
diffuses.
very quickly through it.
Yeah.
It's just like it just gets in there and lightens things very, very quickly, which can be really helpful.
Yeah.
So in terms of like, is there anything else you think that is when we look at minding yourself, just to bring it all together, I suppose, this week, schedule some time for yourself, put it in the diary the way you would for anybody else to actually, carve it out, take it, take those moments as well. Isn't that what you were saying, Alison? Like in the heat of it,
Yeah.
step out of it, practically be, I think alcohol is, I need to do a building emotional resilience around alcohol because
Yeah.
it is such a huge area that causes a lot of so much tension
It would be like mindful drinking. Like you might go into Christmas Day saying, I'm going to have this amount of drinks or I'm not going to have that. But I think kind of actually going in and having a number is a good idea.
Yes, yeah.
If you find like, oh, the white wine kicks in and then my mouth, like if that's, whatever, I'm not even going to say numbers, but if that's your number and
Yes.
I was fine to that point, bring it back one.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
I think
And
there's
everyone has a different number, but knowing your own number and
know your own number and kind of say, do you
yeah.
know what, and I just think like put your water in a nice glass. Do you know what I mean? Like it's just sometimes about kind of the experience of having
It is. Yeah.
a nice glass of water, have lovely jugs on the table with cucumbers or strawberries. I don't care what you have in it, but something.
Totally. Yeah.
Something nice that you kind of reach for it and go, that it's actually also a nice drink to have.
Ritual, isn't it? It's like we did this on a retreat in Crete or this year. I keep saying last year, it was this year, but we would have the apero, but it was like it was like a non-alcoholic beer or a gin and tonic, a non-alcohol. But people didn't really notice or care because it was the idea. It's that sense of watching the sun go down, your nice glass, and people are happy. That's actually what we want, is that sense of ritual and celebration and coming together.
And I think alcohol can be one of the main triggers in families. Like things can be going on
Yes.
okay, but the
Yeah.
alcohol unfortunately loosens things to a point where, things you maybe shouldn't be saying in a
Mhm.
family setting. It's something that perhaps needs to be dealt with on another day,
Yes.
for sure. But the alcohol is a bad lubricant in that regard. So I think you could actually just have a bottle of, the non-alcoholic gin. Give
Mhm.
people options.
Yes.
Don't
Yeah.
make it a big deal. Do you know what I mean? Set it
I
up
think
and make
that's really nice. Yeah, to actually have those options there
have the
because
options there. Make it nice.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So Alison, for everyone here again, just to let them know that your clinic, your website is bewell.com, isn't that right? Is that correct?
Yeah,
Yeah, .ie, excuse me. And Kieran will put it in there for us. And the good thing is that you do actually, because I know my clinic is fully booked out, and I think you yourself are also, but there are therapists there that
I
are
have
in the
two
clinic.
wonderful therapists as well.
Yeah.
Because the need was just so huge in lockdown. It was there beforehand, but I just know that people, and get support. Like, I mean, I'm sure you're the same, but December is bonkers in the lead up to Christmas, and then January, you have the fallout. Like, do you know what I mean? So, like, if you're hurting, do get support.
Yeah. But
From
that's
wherever
really good to
wherever state.
know that you do have people there. Like that's what I
Yeah,
wanted to say and to share with people that there are, that you can actually get one of your amazing therapists and without waiting for months and months and months. So that's really, really good, Alison. And then as well to follow you there, we just put up the link to your Instagram, which I love. And I think, do you know what I wanted to say? You're the Irish Dr. Julie, because you really are, pet. Like you're just as gorgeous and clever
uh,
and all of those things. So fair play to you.
I just want to
Um,
get the big jar and get the drill and just
I
make a mess at
know, and
home.
I'm
That's what I
jealous of
want
her
to do.
studio. Like I was like, I want that studio. Like she
Yeah,
has amazing stuff going
that's
on.
what I want
She
to do. I
gets
want to make a
better,
mess.
says Kieran. Ah, sweetheart, you're fair play to you. And just to let everybody know as well that the next Building Emotion Resilience is going to be on Monday, January the 2nd. I'm actually coming in quite early, and you'll just won't believe who the guest is. She's this amazing person. She is fabulous. She is. Can you guess? Me. I'm having myself. I love
Brilliant.
myself so much. Basically, yeah, I'm going to do it on the 2nd of January because I want to get in there early, and I'm doing a lot of work around intentions. I'll be on News Talk on January the 1st. Kieran has it there. And then also I'm doing 4 articles in the Independent
Yeah.
all around the area of intention setting. So January, please do come with me on that journey because it's going to be a really good one. And also on the Monday, the 23rd of January, I am starting a whole brand new sort of form of therapy on the couch, which is something that was born, like so many things, positive things during COVID. And this was a Instagram live I did every week. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take it. It's going to be online, but a platform like this or another one, and it's really kind of going to the heart of what so many people, like we were saying, long waiting lists, not being able to see a therapist. And that's why I did it, because it was such a way of being actually able to have that connection and to have, like, to sustain your mental health, not just to get it into a good place, but actually look after it every week. So that's going to start on Monday, the 23rd of January. It's going to be affordable and accessible, and that's something I really, really want to do for the community here at large as well. So you watch this space basically, and yeah, so that is really it. And to just finish up, maybe in the chat, if anybody wants to let us know, like, I have a question for you. Do you feel more empowered to have a present but not perfect Christmas? I'd love to know what people think of that. And also, can you make yourself a promise to do something that minds you? Like something that, like, promise yourself here this evening, okay, this week I'm looking at the diary ahead and I'm going to promise myself that I'm going to, for me, it's booking those yoga classes. For you, it might be, going to your swimming pool. It might be getting out to play tennis, whatever it is, but making yourself that promise
Yeah.
so that you can mind others. So
You know
hope,
what, what might be nice, Fiona, is just
yeah.
actually having a moment of peace.
Hmm.
Like, I think Christmas can be very noisy. So it could just be that you actually, put your coat on. It was raining today, but like just go outside and have a cup of tea or coffee. Like, I just think it's sometimes about kind of recognizing the noise that's around, the noise, the heat, all the sugar, everything, the excess, and just actually having a bit of quiet. So it could just be like that. You could do something quick, like just have a cup of tea or just kind of go somewhere quiet where you're just left for 5 minutes. And if everyone did that every day.
It's true. You can actually, 5 minutes is all it takes, really, isn't it, to change your whole perspective, your mindset, and to, as you say, calm your nervous system. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. Okay, so we will leave it there, Alison. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. I knew you would be fantastic. I'm so happy and grateful to you for coming on, because you really are like a fountain of wisdom, and you have that practical component as well. I know I keep on joking about it, but I do think that that's very empowering to be able to have those two, to
Yeah.
access to those two is really important. So thank you, sweetheart, and have a
You're very
have
much.
a wonderful Christmas. And we're going to practice everything we preach. Isn't that it?
Yes, absolutely.
Perfectly.
Imperfectly, perfectly. And listen,
Imperfectly
a very
perfectly.
happy
Yeah.
Christmas to you as well. And thank you to everybody, for showing up tonight.
Yes. And thank
Busy
you to
week. I know
Kieran. What's that, Alison?
it's a busy week. So
A busy
by
week.
showing
Yes.
up, they have actually minded themselves.
That's true. Yeah,
Yeah.
just by being here is that's it. Yeah, you've already doing it, which is
Yeah.
brilliant.
Yeah.
Yeah. So lots of love, everyone, and happy Christmas, Lorraine. Thank you, Pam Pam. I'm so glad Pam Pam says she's definitely feels more empowered in terms
Brilliant.
of the week ahead. Thank you, Deirdre. I'm so glad we got to your question, and lots of love, Tatiana. Thank you, and Lorraine. Are you all set for the Christmas?
Have you seen
Lorraine,
the fun
that's
meme
brilliant.
going around? Am I all set for the Christmas? Am
Of
I,
course.
Margaret?
You know what? I'm as calm as anything now.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter. I like your style very much. Lots of love. Bye,
See you
everyone.
later.
Thanks, Gail. Thanks for
Happy
being here,
Christmas.
sweetheart. Bye.
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 Trying to get out.